First, an update on the direct care professional survey that we're doing that I'm helping to facilitate in conjunction with the DD Council that's been very gracious in funding it and is being performed by UND's Bureau of Educational Assessment and I always mess up the acronym. Let me see. It's being done by Dr. Rob Stupniski that is being kind enough to answer many of my, I'm not going to call them dumb questions, but they're probably dumb questions. But we had 656 responses to the survey that got sent out. According to NDACP, Angela Denius, that accounts for somewhere between 11 and 13% of the DSP workforce, depending upon how you count it and who's chiming in. We had participation from all the NDACP members, as well as Calyx and Minot and Community Options here in Bismarck, both of which are not NDACP members, but saw the value of this. And hopefully that's the beginning of some coordination or collaboration between us in the future. Right now, I had a discussion with the doctor this morning. They have the raw data. He's going over it with some of the analysts that they have in-house there. We will be able to get a copy of the cleaned data fairly soon. I think that's this week. And they are attempting to schedule follow-up stakeholder input sessions with the same group to get more in-depth discussions of the data results. I've also shared that with our partners at NDACP this morning, just so they can be aware of the ask going out and help us with that. And the forecast is for an analysis and summation of the data to be available to us on November the 15th. So I'm hoping that that is something that the DD Council is happy with and the providers are happy with. It would be real hard data on attitudes within the workforce that may influence retention and recruitment, and hopefully provide them with additional information going forward from here to address that particular concern that I believe it was Scott that said it's on every employer's mind throughout the state.
When you talk about attitudes of the workforce, what are the areas you're measuring? Are you talking compensation? Are you talking benefits? Are you talking workload?
To an extent, it asks on all of those. Do these issues influence you to want to enter the workforce, stay in the workforce, leave the workforce? What is the top thing that you would say to someone in response to what your attitude is for, being actually actively recruited in and staying? That's probably an elegant summation of the 30 questions that UND had us ask, which also includes some demographic data. So we may be addressing the overlaps into particular household demographics that may influence how that gets answered in terms of, primary provider in the household income, and some demographic information on ethnicity or languages spoken. Because I know that NDACP had raised some, not issues or concerns, but notes that the new American population in Fargo in particular is a challenging group to provide services for because of some language and cultural barriers. So by the middle of next month, there'll be something that I can, hopefully, if everybody hits their deliverables, distribute out to the rest of the commission. And if it's of interest to people, we can have a discussion of it at the next meeting. But again, thank you to the DD Council for helping us provide that. I think it'll be a good thing for people to have and have a discussion with their legislators about before the next session. Olmstead Plan revision work, that is the technical assistant collaborative that we are employing as a consultant to provide systems assessment and additional work on revising the state's Olmstead plan. They have been conducting a series of interviews, or not interviews, discussions with various members of DHS, Jessica Thomason, Caprice Knapp, Jake Reuter from MFP, Nancy Nicholas-Meyer, Services, Tina Bay, Pam Sagnis, and representatives from the Housing Finance Agency to get a picture for a systems assessment to say what are the strengths and what are possible gaps that might be identified in service provision in North Dakota. Right now they have planned to talk with Eric Elkins from Medicaid and Medical Services as sort of the person that Caprice identified as most likely to be able to work with them on some data requests to really dig into and get some quantifiable information to back up any of the anecdotal comments that may have been made. They've also had a series of stakeholder listening sessions for persons with lived experiences, families, providers, and they're also collecting a stakeholder input survey along those lines to see what people have to say about strengths, challenges, gaps within the system. And the goal is to have a systems assessment white paper provided to the Olmstead Commission by early December.
So all of these matters are things that could be delivered to the certain committees on the legislature?
Yes.
Deliverables to us, but also giving them some tangible
yes
areas where there might be gaps or improvements needed.
Part of both of them have been looking at data, but I've asked them to do it in sort of a white paper / executive summary format in order to give a digestibility to it that might not be normally accessible from the numbers. The consultants are highly educated people, and even I get confused by the discussions with bears fairly quickly when we're talking about quantifiable survey data. But I'm hoping that what we will be provided with is something that provides some suggestions from detailed learned analysis of data that's been provided.
Just for the commission's benefit, who was the ones that funded these particular studies for us?
The DD Council has been generous enough to be providing support for this. Also, the Money Follows the Person program has provided some money for the TAC consultant to come in. It's not coming out of P&A's budget, and our contribution has been my time to facilitate and coordinate as an in-kind. Since we had the discussion on the strategic planning goals, the first two white papers I was thinking about or identifying a need for were on housing and transportation. I was recently at the State Housing Forum. Jennifer Henderson has been on the meeting and still is. Hi, Jen. Thank you for all of the copious amounts of information that I received there. In discussions with Jennifer and other individuals, including Jake Reuter, housing is one of the sort of precedent conditions to community inclusion and home and community-based services. If you don't have a home to receive the services in, it's very difficult to be opting for a non-institutional setting. So that's one of the white papers that I propose to focus on, as well as transportation. I know that Trevor, who's been here, and other individuals with mobility impairments, and also individuals that don't present as mobility impaired, have indicated that transportation for services is a challenge for them, either everyday transportation or specifically transportation to get to the services that they need. And I've been conducting a series of phone calls, fact-finding, what have you, with the local Bisman Transit Organization and some of the transit organizations around the state to ask them how they provide services, especially in rural areas. And so that is one of the white papers that hopefully I'll be able to work into the next quarter and get out. Just so I think it's something that I don't think we forget about it, but it's very easy to pay short shrift to those basic necessities. You have to have a home, you have to have some way to get from it to get to other services. And while we may have a tendency to hyper-focus on healthcare, there's a lot of other things that were identified in that executive order that we need to give good intentional attention to. And for instance, I know that Nancy Nicholas Myers in Aging Services has been attentive to this program and asked for rate increases in the last session. It would be interesting to have a brief conversation with her about how that usage has increased or altered, or what type of feedback that she's gotten on that particular service for people. And I know that that is one of the pieces of the 1915I that some of the service providers I've talked to have hoped to be providing. So that's my aim for hopefully the next quarter on white papers. Does anyone have questions, critiques, commentary?
Well, I certainly think, when you're talking about transportation, obviously it is more than those that have the mobility impairment. I think about the elderly trying to stay in their home that are no longer able to drive. Other people who with disabilities who aren't able to drive. And that's a huge cross-section of folks that are, just being able to go get groceries. Everything that they do or need to do. When you're not able to drive, it's a lot getting to your appointments. So I think that's a good cross area to be taking a look at, because it's impacting all of our services. Certainly housing issues, for maintaining housing for those with mental health issues is a big issue as well.
Yeah, affordable housing is getting to be a much larger issue for whole populations.
Inquiries, I touched on this earlier. One contact that I've had which is to bring forward an individual inquiry, will be someone that is wanting to discuss something that does involve confidential health information. And so the next time we may have an inquiry on the schedule, and it would be at least partially in an executive session, if everyone is okay with that. If not, we probably need to discuss that, because I think we have confidentiality concerns. Anyone? Okay.
And Danielle, this is Jennifer Henderson with North Dakota Housing. I just wanted to let you know that I put in the chat a link to the statewide housing needs assessment information that we have so far published. And there is some single document white papers that are going to be forthcoming to help you understand the housing need and really kind of summarize the information that was presented in the very large study. So if my contact information is also in the chat as well.
Thank you, Jen. To be clear, this is the 200+ page paper that Nancy presented on. Is that the one you're linking to?
I'm linking to that and a few modules of the study as well. But we are working on a condensed version, which will be much easier for everyone to have at their bedside to review.
Sounds like that'll help you with your research too.
Or if I need a doorstop. Thanks, Jen. I appreciate you sharing that information. I have to admit that I need to get through that full initial document.
If you're interested, a real brief summary, I will say that the projections indicate what most of us already know, and that is going forward out to 2025, we will have an increased population in very low and extremely low income households. And so the need for affordable housing is not going to decrease by any means. And also that sorry, my dog is barking in the background, but our population growth is going to be exacerbated in the senior housing area. So the need for environmental modifications or aging at home is going to be pretty significant in the next 5 years.
Thank you for that, Jen. We appreciate that. That's kind of right up our alley, right into the wheelhouse of things we should be looking at.
And one of the things for people to watch for, one of the persons that I made contact with at the housing forum was Senator, I'm going to slaughter his last name, I believe it's Kroon from Grand Forks, who will be carrying a bill for the Housing Incentive Fund, which, as the forum sort of informed me, is the Housing Incentive Fund is the state matching fund that helps individual housing authorities draw down a lot of federal dollars. It's a very good way to leverage money that is already available out there, and it really is a piece that, as I said earlier, can underpin that start of home community-based services and inclusion if you have the money to start building the roof to put over somebody's head so they can receive those services out in the community. And thank you, Jen, for that summary. Jen is a wonderful resource for anybody that doesn't know her. Not that I am trying to drive additional feet to ask her for information, but she's been very giving of her time, as you can see from her presence today.
Scott?
Yes, please. Anybody who would like more information or would like to chat about housing needs, please contact me. And I hope that my chat didn't get lost in the stopping of recording, or if anybody dropped off of this meeting, you might not see my contact information, so I'll put it in again. But that said, one of the goals of our agency for this housing needs assessment is, yes, it's a very complex assessment, but we are very hopeful to have some housing indicators identified from this study that we can update on an annual basis to be more helpful for all of you. And also to just reiterate the Housing Incentive Fund, Daniel is right. Kroon is submitting a bill for Housing Incentive Fund, and it absolutely is the key to helping housing in rural communities. It is very flexible, unlike some of our federal funding that we have. And so we very much prioritize the need for housing resources in our rural communities through this program, and very much appreciate your support in that endeavor.
Jen, this is Scott Burlingame. I have a quick question for you, if you don't mind. Can you tell me what the outliers were that led to the future need for additional low-income housing? Like, why are we projecting that we're going to see an increase in that population?
So I'm probably not as well versed in the modules that they use, but ultimately, when you consider the available jobs that we have today and the income levels of those jobs and the growth of our community, it is not in the oil impacted communities. It is not in the higher waging earning income communities. So we are going to see those increases in levels of income that are in the very low and extremely low. But also it's very much related to the transition of population from our aging population. So we're going to have more of our population in the older segments that are reliant on Social Security only income, or maybe very low retirement income levels, that are going to shift how we need to deal with housing.
Perfect. Great outstanding answer. I'm not surprised that you would say that. And I think that's one of the important ways to frame this conversation as well, is that this is workforce housing. So if you're complaining about your McDonald's not getting you your Big Mac in time, it might be because of lack of housing. So
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. And childcare and all of the other things that, Governor is very supportive of. And he's not wrong in the fact that we need good childcare to support people being in the workforce, to increase our workforce levels. And there's a lot of dominoes here with regard to our needs in North Dakota. And Housing Incentive Fund is definitely a way to support those needs.
Thank you again, Jen. Appreciate that. Are there any actions you want us to be taking?
Yes, I've distributed to you all the results from the annual survey that I put out to everyone. It has suggestions on areas that we might focus on, areas that they would like to see some light shown on, and some comments on particular issues or challenges they might see. I would like volunteers for a subcommittee to work through that and see if there are ideas there for us to focus at least our education on over the next year. Anybody in the room want to raise their hands, or should I send out an email after this asking for volunteers? The one thing I want to avoid is it being a formal, well, I would like to avoid, if we can, it being a formal meeting, which would mean 5 people or less. Otherwise, we can have up to 6 people. It'll just be incumbent. Well, we can have as many people as we want. It'll just be incumbent upon me to notice those meetings, and they'll be a little bit harder to then change.
So you're saying 3 or 4 would be fine, or what are you looking for on that committee size?
However, as many want to participate. The reason I was just saying a subcommittee instead of having this discussed in full matter is so that we can go through it before our next scheduled meeting and generate that list of topics.
I would volunteer.
So Carlotta, Julie.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I can volunteer.
Anyone else online? We've got 3 volunteers here in the room.
And perhaps we could have a motion to then form that subcommittee.
Okay. Appreciate the volunteers. We'd like to get a motion to form that subcommitte.
This is Scott. I'll make the motion to form that subcommittee.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Can you tell us
Aye.
who the 3 are? Can you tell us who the 3 are, please?
Yes, Carlotta, Julie, and Siobhan have all put their names forward. That'd be part of the motion to include their names. Okay, is there, you have anything else, Dan, any other motions that you want us to consider?
If we could, just formally have that subcommittee of individuals to vet I believe it's 5 or 6 out of 20 applicants for the advisory council that I don't know from outreach efforts and it hasn't been formally vouched for by another member of the commission.
So you're looking for people in the field that may have some knowledge of the people that are involved?
Or people that are willing to look at an application and what someone gives as their bona fides, and perhaps we have some sort of brief discussion with them and the discussion of them to, just make sure that we're vetting persons that come on this. I realize that it's something that's essentially at the discretion of the chairs to have the membership of this council, but I want everybody to feel okay that we are not just throwing open the doors to everyone.
Okay,
This is
all
Judy,
right.
this is Judy Lee. May I make a point?
Yes,
My
please
hand
do.
is up, but I don't know if it shows. I would suggest that you send out an email. In fact, I kind of wish that you had on the last one, because I think it's important to have a balance between advocates and other parties who are not either an individual with a disability or a family member of somebody. We need both, but it shouldn't be only one side or the other. And it just maybe takes a little more time. So if you would send out or consider sending out an email, maybe to add 2 to the last group, or also to look at people who might be interested and then have a pool. We may need to interview people for this advisory committee, whatever. But there should be a cross section of the people, in my opinion, that are on the Olmstead Commission who are reviewing this information.
We can form the committee and fill it by interest in after this, I guess.
Okay.
And maybe as we make the motion, and you can give us a little bit of background as you email out, and we'll see how that goes. So what you're looking for is a committee to vet the advisory council.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I'd entertain a motion to that effect. Julie makes the motion. Your second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. We don't want to die for lack of a second. Any other comment or? Okay, all those in favor of creating this committee, based on what Dan will fill out for us, so what the committee's actions are, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay. The motion passes, and so, and I guess Dan will contact the whole commission by email, and we'll look for everybody to show some interest if they feel like that. What I found when we worked on the strategic planning, and maybe Scott can chime in too, it wasn't an inordinate amount of hours. I mean, we probably 6 to 8 hours, maybe 10 hours, I don't know, overall. But, and some responses by email. So it's, I don't think you'll find over the next 3-4 months that it will be burdensome. So hopefully we'll get our volunteers on that side. Anything
The
else,
hardest
Tim?
part is trying to find a time when everybody can get together. That's definitely harder than actually doing the work.
Yes. No, Wally, I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Stan. The last thing we have on the agenda, and we're running now a little past the closing hour, is just any comments that the public would have. We've had some good commentary throughout the meeting, but if there's anything else that would, and then I'd like the commission members, after we take public comment, to make any other comments you'd like. Seeing how we only meet quarterly, I'd like just any issues that are still on the table, I'd like to hear those.
This is Carlotta. I would like to suggest that they maybe come up for their public comments so that people online can hear better. The microphones are
Sure.
here just so that they can be heard.
And Matt, if you have anything you'd like to comment on, you're certainly welcome to come up.
May I?
Yes. Public session is now.
Thank you, in session. This is Brittany Armstrong, I'm here, public parent of multiple children with disabilities and chair of DD Council. Here is myself today though. Going backwards in my comments, because the last couple of sections didn't necessarily have opportunity. In regards to the Olmstead Advisory Council and representation, if the Olmstead Commission doesn't have 50% representation of individuals with disabilities or their family members, I strongly feel that the discussion that was had at the last meeting and of the creation of the advisory council, that the advisory council should be individuals with disabilities, their family members and whatnot, providing that lived experience information, education in an advisory capacity to the commission. If it needs to be balanced in a 51% individuals and families, then I feel that the governor's office needs to address, the commission needs to be balanced. As best practice, any entity that's advising on policy and procedure of individuals with disabilities and programs and services needs to have 51% representation of individuals with disabilities and their families. My 2 cents there. Going back, the subcommittees that are being formed and whatnot, just questioning, this is in fact a governor's commission, therefore open record, and any subcommittees, I feel that there should be open to the public as well, not necessarily open, but the minutes and the information shared. Then, mostly on the plan and goals, I'm wondering from things that I've heard in the meetings over the last little while too, what is the role of the commission as a whole with the plans and goals, the involvement of the commission outside of the quarterly meetings the day of? Yes, there's discussion of different things in that nature, but the surveys that have gone out, the outreach, engagement with different stakeholders, what's going on outside of the actual meetings, aside from just the coordinator's role. And then there was the discussion of bringing Olmstead complaint concerns forth from the community to the governor's office and back and whatnot, but where's P&A's involvement in that and the expectation of P&A's involvement if we actually have a bona fide Olmstead complaint? Just something, questions for the commission as a whole. And then one piece I feel like has been left out in the education capacity is economic assistance. There's been transportation, there's housing, the DD division, all these other major players and entities, but the benefit cliffs and all those discussions, there's a lot of education that the commission could benefit from economic assistance. Understanding the multiple ways of qualifying for Medicaid, who gets booted off as soon as there's a situation change, who has a lovely 12-month grace period, and how that impacts services, being able to access services and being able to maintain those services. That I don't necessarily feel that you guys have had been schooled on.
I appreciate each of those comments, and this whole meeting is being recorded, and we'll keep those for posterity as well, and action. So, any commission thoughts on what's been presented? And I appreciate your willingness to be interactive today too, so I hopefully you feel like it's been open in that regard. You participate.
I'm not sure how to do this, or if it's just a question or a motion, but I would like to look into our membership and that subcommittee group of consumers with lived experience, and how we could either get them to commission meetings to provide comment or get them to serve on the Olmstead Commission, so we have a larger voice of consumers. So I'm not sure how to word that, but I do think it's important. Sorry, this is Julie.
That's one we might want to take a look at, seeing how this is a governor-formed commission through the Olmstead Act, and everybody around. I'm one of the few community members, and everyone else comes with a different expertise in terms of the position and.
So that may be maybe you look into it, or look at you.
Yeah.
But a process that I do think, I'm glad we have the subcommittee and we have 20-some people we're going to look at, but how can we really assure their participation with the commission and hear their voice? I think that's very important.
that was really some of the need for the advisory committee to say, let's have more lived experience coming at it. So if that then morphs into, let's make that more of the commission, that might take a little bit of research.
Right, that's why I wasn't sure how to say that or what to do, but I think it's important.
So I mean, we probably can't act on it immediately
Yeah.
without the question has been raised, so.
Yes.
I think we'd all be open to that. Makes sense.
Chair, I'm another citizen member and I'm an individual with lived experience. And I know that also being on the Consumer Family Network, which I'm a chair of, we have a lot of consumers and we are trying really hard, and getting them to just to our meetings alone is really kind of hard with limited technology and, especially during COVID, times of COVID. So if we could be help facilitating somehow, have help, facilitating people to get into meetings or getting online to be participants in meetings, that would help.
And
greatly.
this is Julie. I wanted to plug too, we are creating stipends for people to come in person to these meetings if they'd like, or if they have technology needs. You could feel free to send them my way so we can support that, so people can participate.
That's great knowledge to have.
Yeah. Travel, hotel, mileage, food, they need technology accommodations. We would support that cost for anyone to come so they can participate.
This is Carlotta in the other area of being able to participate in this. I know that we also had the surveys that were done sent out to our recovery centers. And I got feedback from the members of the recovery center that it sometimes is very, very difficult to fill out and to understand what's being presented and done. And so I thought that I'd bring that back too, is that, if in fact we're really trying to get input from people with disabilities, I think that we also need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that they can provide that feedback to us too. So, and that was just the comment that was coming back to me from members, so I'm just sharing it.
I just wanted to make a point on Julie's, the council's support is for attendance at these meetings as well as any advisory council member that's selected would be able to receive stipend for attendance based on our typical stipend for attendance and reimbursement to facilitate their being here. And that was something that we offered in the interim of last meeting. So if any asking of somebody in the community to participate, board, commission, council, subcommittee, even their time should be compensated. So that is something we wanted to make sure we did.
That's good. Yeah, you have all that down now.
Good
Being
note.
recorded, so.
Yeah, good note.
And the feedback of the openness, Carlotta, was addressed on several fronts. The open-ended is very difficult for the population that we're targeting.
Apparently never had the lawyer ask questions.
Yeah, and this is Julie again, and perhaps that's something the consumer advisory committee could look at, making questions or what we're putting out there reviewed by that group too for feedback to make it more plain language, or what other formats are good for you to fill this out in, if it's using a QR code, using Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, or having someone that you can call and just answer the questions to, or something like that. So that could maybe be something we go back to this group, this committee, to review those things and provide.
I know that our members lack technology.
Yeah.
Access to technology, and so Dad did provide paper copies, and that was helpful. So
Yeah.
that's something that they'd like to see more of, is paper copies of things, because they don't have the technology.
And it's Julie, paper copies, and we also, a lot of times, when we put stuff out, I always put my phone number, because people just will call me and I just have to take it down and help, and that's okay, we do that too.
This is Brittany. Did you feel that the open-ended survey, the Olmstead survey, or the tax survey, or both? And did you have the members that you're speaking of, did they get the 12-question tax survey associated with listening sessions?
The paper copy that was provided to Carlotta was the Olmstead Annual Survey and was not the tax survey.
Would you distribute the tax survey to?
Yes.
I don't think there's a good behavioral health, mental health representation with the tax survey.
This is Nikki Maddock, just here as a consumer parent of a child with a developmental disability. And then I also am not here in this capacity, but do work for early intervention in Region 7 as an experienced parent. So this is not representative of that job, but is kind of another thing that I'm doing. When we were talking about the transportation, we're really looking at that older age, right, population. I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of the transportation issues within that preschool school age setting. My Duchenne muscular dystrophy kid, so a kid with a severe neuromuscular degenerative disease whose stairs are an issue already. They did bring an accessible van to his preschool to take him to daycare, so he walked down bus stairs because that's what they told him they had to do. And the risk of that is that if he falls and breaks a bone, there could be a fatty embolism syndrome that could kill him. So it's not a little thing of just making a 3.5-year-old walk down the stairs. That could be his life. That's a major transportation issue, and it's happening to our most valuable commodities, which is our little children. And I'm obviously more geared towards that little children life, right? That's where I'm at, and my kid is a 3.5-year-old. I work with the kids 0 to 3. But that other component of it is that we have kids who need services in the preschool range, but because of the way that busing is set up, maybe their parent is trying to work, they know they need the services in preschool, but they're within that half mile of the preschool for their house. They do not get access to busing. So now how do they get these services, half-day services, and get to a daycare with a parent trying to work full-time?
Or they have no car.
Or they have no car, but they're within a half mile. I mean, those are things that when you're talking about transportation, that's also a pretty big component of our littles getting the services that they need. And I just wanted to make you aware of that's happening. And then on the similar respect of that, my child's bus was also dropping the wrong kids off. So I would say that that's a major transportation issue. If the busing system is sending the wrong kids to the wrong families, my daycare provider argued with the bus attendant, and he told her, no, this is him, got a different child into his stroller and was putting him down on the lift. And so our receptionist had to go on the bus and identify my child. So that's a transportation issue. Similarly, that same bus route also dropped off a boy at a girl's stop and then proceeded to tell the grandma that they did not have her granddaughter on the bus, but she was in fact on the bus. So if you want to talk about transportation and you want to really get into the nitty-gritty, are those really vulnerable developmental disability kids are also getting put into compromised positions. And I know there's a lack, it's across the board, right? It's a lack of bus drivers, it's a lack of quality attendance on the buses, but we have kids that are nonverbal riding buses and don't have a voice for themselves. And now as a parent, can you trust that bus situation? So just food for thought for when you're thinking about transportation issues, that it goes into the public school system as well.
Well, and I can be in touch further, Nikki.
Yeah. And then my other education point is that Brittany kind of alluded to it, but again, like I said, I work with the littles. And so all of our kiddos in the early interventions get Medicaid on the waiver and are on a home and community-based waiver system essentially, but at age 3, it's that cliff, right, that we talked about. And I don't know if there's a really fine understanding of what home and community-based waiver system looks like for the physical limitation kids. That's my kid. If there's no cognitive impairment, we were told, yeah, he's probably not going to get on a waivered system, but he does 4 outpatients a week. And if we both want to work full time, how do we do that if he can't qualify for home community-based waivered systems? That means that I basically have to decide on my job or if my child gets the services that they need, because I can't utilize respite because you're telling me he doesn't qualify because of our screening tool. And so I would say, if you want to take something back to the governor, the screening tool is the par right now and was never meant to be utilized for pediatrics and is being utilized for pediatrics for the home and community-based waivered services. And that's a huge issue because we're literally assessing children in a way that was never meant to be assessed to decide if they get services and the livelihood of their parents to be able to put them where they need to be and get them the services that they need. So that, I mean, to me, that's a really big, almost, how would you say it, a disadvantage or not of the system of the home community-based waiver systems is the screening tool and the way that we qualify kids, especially when there's no intellectual or cognitive disability involved. That's my jam. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate public comments that have been made throughout this, and then Matt.
Well, I'm going to keep my remarks pretty brief. Just a couple of thoughts. I don't know, some of you know my family, and I've been involved with disabilities issues for over 50 years. I remember when our kids were born, we were told to send them to Grafton. And I watched other families send their kids. My wife was a nurse, and we decided she could give up her career, and we took care of our kids at home. So I've been to lots of meetings, participated in lots of groups, both help develop reports and different evaluations, read a lot of them. What I'm looking for now is some results. I mean, it's an oversimplification, but that's what, as a parent. I'm going on 73 years old, and I have a daughter at home at 44 years on life support. And the program we're in is family support. That's not sustainable. I'm not sure, but I think the commission's been in business now for what, 10+ years? Maybe more than that.
Initially, there was an Olmstead Commission formed in approximately 2002.
So,
We revamped in the last 3
yes, no, I
years.
understand that. And I know it's complicated, but one of the things, I'm an engineer. And when you work on large projects, sometimes you have to break things up into different work groups, because you can have different work groups working on different areas like we talked about here, and then bring that back. I think one of the things that I've noticed is everybody's involved in the whole program with all these different needs. And you might need to break it up into compatible groups. You know, I'm looking at young families who are dealing with issues similar to what we did many years ago. I've got a daughter at home that's 44 years old, she's an adult, which are issues, and she has high medical needs, a little different than the behavioral issues. And I'm thinking that might be something for you to consider, is, you know, this subcommittee you're talking about might be, you know, a similar model to how you can get input into your quarterly meetings with different work groups who've done work in between to move things along a little quicker. Anyway, I think those are the things I wanted to highlight. And I appreciate everybody's efforts, but I think results is what families are looking for.
We appreciate your patience and tenacity and being with the program all this period of time. We recognize that, you know, that's when Teresa was wanting this to become an action committee too, because it was reformed because there wasn't enough action in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things that I could share over the years, but, you know, I think I'm trying to summarize it down to what needs to happen now at my stage in life. And with my daughter, my daughter's doing quite well, especially considering what's happened through the COVID years here. But when I look back as to what is going to happen to sustain her ability to have a life, that's a challenge. And I know me being around and taking care of a lot of those details is not sustainable. And so that's the perspective I'm coming from. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. being with us as members of the public, because that's where action comes from. Your openness and consistency. So what I'd like to do before closing the meeting, though, is just open it to any of the commission members that have something you'd like to say after all that we have absorbed today. So I'd kind of just go around the horn with those commission members that are still with us. Dan, do we have everybody still here, or?
Senator Lee and Representative Mitskog have exited. We have the judge online, and that would be it beside the people that are in the room.
Bruce, would you like to give your impressions of the meeting today?
As long.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to thank the committee members that put together the goals. That's a good project, you know, and we just got to keep struggling forward. But you know, sometimes we need to be a little more focused from my perspective. And, you know, and I think we did some of that today, but then we get distracted, and that doesn't help anybody, but that's my bent. So appreciate it, everybody's hard work. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for sticking with us. You know, we did go over half an hour, and I regret that as your chair, but I think it was important that we addressed all of the issues that came before us. So, anyone else? Is it just the commission members that are here? My sidekick, Ryan, do you have any?
Just thank you, Dan, for the legwork and setting up today's agenda and having the presentations ready. Thank you to everybody on the work group for the goals. Thank you for those who volunteered for the work groups going forward. And yeah, I think that's just gratitude for all the work, the good work that is being done.
Thank you to Wally.
We'll keep hammering away on the workforce with the governor. So
Yes,
got to get more people in North Dakota.
absolutely.
Well, if there's no other comments, I guess I'd open a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. You can sit around for a while.
I'll second it, yeah.
All right. I think that's all we have to do. We'll take the motion in the second and declare the meeting adjourned.
No, with the judge, unless the judge logged off. I mean, we have 5 in the room.
Okay.
So. And yeah, the judge is still online.
I'm city council now.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, let's see what happened there.
Musical chairs.
It needs the newly elected or where you guys did the internally council chair and why she's doing this.
Sure.
Thank you. Really appreciate your insights.
I'm still on camera.
Let me take care of that.
This
I just.
From a P&A standpoint.
Let me make sure that this is done.
Yeah.
That's good.